Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another event in the IAFC's Leadership webinar series. Thank you very much for joining us today. Today, we have an exciting and a very thought-provoking presentation on the 3 steps for effective data strategy for fire and EMS. I want to thank our sponsor today, First Do, who is bringing this webinar to you and also providing you with the information that they share today along with their partners. First off, a little housekeeping. Audio is being broadcast using VoIP technology through your computer speakers or headset. Make sure your speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is turned up. Audience microphones have been muted for this webinar. If you experience any technical difficulty, please immediately contact the IFC support at webinars@ifc.org or via the chat function in the top right-hand corner, and we'll get somebody to help you out just as quick as we can. For today, the chat function is enabled for you to ask questions, for you to put comments in there. Again, we want this to be a two-way dialogue during this webinar for you asking questions or you bringing out points that you hear from the presenters. In the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you will find both a chat and a Q&A menu. You're encouraged to share comments and then submit questions for the speakers. Use the public or the comment section for just commenting on things, and then the Q&A for submitting actual questions that at the end, we will have the presenters answer either in person or through that chat function. If the presenters have provided resource materials or links, you can find those in the handout section, also located in the top right corner of your screen. Now, I'd like to present Mike Gordy, who is going to be our lead presenter today. Take it away, Mike. Mike, you're muted.
There we go. Good day and welcome to the IFC webinar, the 3 steps for effective data strategy for fire and EMS, presented by First Do with our partner Esri. We'd like to discuss the importance of a modern all-in-one fire EMS suite and then utilize both native reporting within the suite and third-party reporting tools, leveraging that data for strategic purposes within your agency or your region. My name is Mike Gordy. I'm a solutions consultant with First Do, and with me are my colleagues Ben Hastings and Ryan Seymour, product manager and product expert from our reporting team. During the course of our discussion, they'll be manning the Q&A section, so please submit your questions to them. I'm also delighted to introduce Mike Cox, Director of Fire and EMS Solutions from Esri. Esri and First Do have a tremendous partnership that allows the flow of geospatial data from the ArcGIS family of applications into First Do, as well as Esri's ability to consume First Do data. For agencies that are utilizing both platforms, they can then strategically use this partnership to plan not only for everyday responses, but other response needs within their communities. Mike?
Thank you very much, Mike. And as Mike mentioned, the Mike and Mike show here, I am the Director of Fire and EMS for Esri and come to you after 27 years in a metro-sized department in Central Virginia. And been dealing with First Do for a number of years now, and pretty proud to say that one of our key public safety partners and really disrupting the market as far as records management systems, inspections, and other workflows. And what I really like to discuss when I speak of First Do is their mission aligns with the fire service. If you hear the backstory of how they got into this kind of industry, it revolves around a firefighter fatality during a single family dwelling response. So just, their heart's in the right place as well. But I can tell you that it's a one-stop shop in a lot of ways, and that's a key efficiency component for our operations, particularly administrative operations, data collection, and reporting. And I can, before I retired from the fire service just a couple of years ago, we did a quick study, and on average in a 24-hour shift, a firefighter might have to log into 22 different systems to get their job done, which means a few things. One, they're probably not getting everything done they need to get done because there's a lack of efficiency there. And 2, they're going to find the path of least resistance to get through their 24-hour shift. We know that. So everything we can do to ease that burden of getting the right data to the right person at the right time really is, supports the fire service mission moving forward. And as a partner, they can share that data, that key data back and forth bidirectionally with their GIS or with your GIS, which of course you likely already have access to. But a great story around that, and the true integration we have with First Due is during Hurricane Ian and that Type 1 response, particularly at a federal USAR level, for wide area searches, rescues, and those kind of issues being addressed. The first thought of the First Due personnel was, how can I get more information to the responders in the field? And so reaching out to Esri's disaster response program, we were able to, in just a few minutes, make a connection with recent imagery that was generated during the response to Ian. So we had UAS and fixed wing and satellite remote sensing data or visualization imagery available within minutes to all the responders that were leveraging First Due during that significant event. So just one example of how we can push data back and forth. And we can expand on that at a later time if you have any questions about how we can easily integrate to Esri's fire solutions to allow you to perform additional performance metrics beyond the ones that are already available to you in First Due. So Mike, I'm going to stop there, but I'll be available for any questions throughout the webinar. And thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Great hearing from you. So in looking at the importance of a modern all-in-one fire RMS suite, we need to define what needs to exist within that platform. First of all, any modern fire RMS needs to be cloud-based. That way we can ensure changes in information are available to all parties needing it in near real time. And with utilization of progressive web design, we allow for offline functionality. By using the cloud in a multi-tenant configuration, data security is provided, as well as backups, failover capability, ensuring continuity of operations and platform agnostic access. In addition, the cloud acts as your data warehouse, storing data without the need for local servers and not impacting the IT department. Prevention, preparing for response through a complete inspection module that applies applicable codes tied back to fire inspection checklists, custom dynamic forms, passing appropriate data to permits, invoicing within the inspection, and most importantly, full access to pre-plans. Secondary notifications and pre-plans, where the rubber's going to meet the road. Your crews are dispatched and utilize your pre-plans. The pre-plans need to not only indicate normal pre-plan elements, but leverage inspection and other internal data, as well as external data such as layers from ArcGIS, such as flood, evacuation zones, traffic infrastructure layers. As part of building pre-plans, you need the ability to effectively assign and administer pre-plans to ensure the most accurate data. Finally, incorporate visual indicators of your water supply with the ability to document any testing and flow information. Community engagement, involving your residential and business stakeholders to enhance your pre-plan data for everyday response, but also apply for permits, request inspections, payments of fees, and receive notifications through the system. Additionally, in serving the community risk reduction efforts within inspections and pre-plans to incorporate OVAP scoring for target hazards within the inspection pre-plan process. Incident documentation, every firefighter's favorite thing. We need to be able to document fire, EMS, and fire investigations with the ability to add reportable custom data elements and leverage data that exists within the system to simplify incident data entry. Scheduling. We need to have a robust scheduling solution utilizing push notification to members' mobile devices, but also automate as many scheduling processes as possible, and then leverage that schedule not only within incident reporting, but throughout other parts of your system. Assets and inventory. Don't just check your trucks, but track all aspects of apparatus, equipment, inventory needs with checks based on your departmental needs, including work orders, inventory control, and preventative maintenance tasks. This should include medications if needed, whether scheduled medications conforming to DEA requirements or unscheduled medications as well. Training, allowing your agency to enter and report on training based on your needs to satisfy tracking of national, state, or local requirements, utilizing templates to plan that training in advance. And finally, events and activities, allowing you to keep full track of all activities within the agency, whether incident response, training, or inspections, as well as a calendar for public-facing events such as parades and touch-a-truck events. These are all parts of a modern fire EMS platform. We're going to take a look at First Due and show you some of these features that every modern fire and EMS platform should have. Inspections. When the inspector arrives on site, he needs access not only to historical inspection data, but he needs to be able to review occupancy information where he can add any of that OVAP, community risk reduction scoring, which will directly flow to the responders. After completing an inspection on a checklist, directly citing any code items that are applicable, our modern fire EMS needs to generate an emailed report to as many people who need to see that report as possible. Within this system, he should also be able to issue any permits or automate invoicing to allow for processing of invoices without human intervention. As part of the inspections, an inspector may note temporary construction that might affect response, so they update the pre-plan, and that information is now available for suppression. As you can see here, I'm going to say I've got some temporary construction. I'm going to pull a warning icon up out of the system. I'm going to place that, and I'm going to add the information my providers need to see in the system. In this case, I'll make it big. I'm going to say what the issue is. In this case, I've got that temporary construction, even to the point of adding any wooden pallets that I need to within the system. Correction, pictures of wooden pallets within the system. Once I do that, I publish that out to the system, and that's now available for my responders on scene. After the inspector concludes his inspection, there's a call for service at this same location. CAD points the pre-plans and creates the incident report in the backbone of the system. It routes our responders to the call and displays the pre-plan information that we've put in the system, both prior to today's inspection and today's inspection as well. As we can now see here, those pallets are visible to us. The pre-plan also needs to include hazmat, building annotations, as well as other pertinent data, such as fire control panel information, FDC information, utility disconnects. These are all mission critical items. We also have a dashboard available to our responders where we're going to take those icons and have a unique story that utilizes information from within our occupancy record to provide information based on the occupancy type. We could also see the data provided by the community, such as a functional needs person, if that was indicated in the system. You also note the community risk reduction scoring, OVAP scoring, is visible, as well as inspection data from our prior inspections, including the violations that we just issued in our past inspection. The modern fire RMS also needs to reach out to other external sources, such as the Brycer compliance engine, to see if there are any issues with the fire control systems. Once we've completed our incident, we do need to document our incident report. As incidents are documented, the CAD feed is utilized to automatically add apparatus and location information. The occupancy record is also accessed to complete any pertinent data that needs to be included, such as property type, structure type, NIFR's property status, length and dimensions of the building, floors above and below grade, automatically put in during part of the pre-plan process or the inspection process, flowing in at 3 a.m. as we're completing our incident report. I also have the ability to add persons involved from within the occupancy contact list, so I can pull up demographic information in as well, or elsewhere within the system for, say, an injured firefighter. Finally, let's reach out and add weather information to this system as well, pulling that from an API so we can populate that information. The modern fire RMS also needs the ability to allow per apparatus actions taken, as well as per apparatus narratives, and options for approving reports that include a QA/QI workflow. Let's go back to our apparatus, and I'm going to highlight the scheduler. This has pulled the personnel in from our scheduling solution. The scheduler needs to allow for simple drag and drop functionality with the ability to have multiple rotation and views of assignments. It also needs to leverage mobile applications and other communication methods to provide callback functionality. And also it needs to communicate with other modules such as training, events, and activities. Your personnel also need to have a complete record, including demographic information, certification logs, unique document storage. Finally, the scheduler needs insight and be able to communicate with other modules within our system. In this case, I've got simple drag and drop functionality, and I'm not only going to pull that person into the schedule, I'm going to assign the proper pay rates, and I'm going to satisfy the requirements, in this case, putting a paramedic on a truck. The scheduler is going to talk to my training module in this case. I'm going to populate my class with the information I need, and I'm going to send a specific piece of apparatus to an event. In this case, Ladder 201 is going to schedule this training event. They're automatically populated in the system, minimizing the number of clicks I need to put those persons in. Now that we've discussed the components of a modern RMS, we need to utilize the data that we've entered in all aspects of our operations with effective native reporting tools within the application. Whether utilizing tools within an individual module, out-of-the-box pre-built reporting for that data that we have a constant need for, whether it be from within a single module of the system or by combining multiple data sets. Ad hoc reporting is also needed to build reports unique to our organizational demands. And finally, unique dashboards based on rules to have all the data that we need at our fingertips. In this case, we're going to go ahead to our pre-plan dashboard. We're going to look at the information we need. I can go ahead and assign pre-plans, create cycles, assign due dates, look at when the last pre-plan update was. However, I can also use this as a reporting tool. In this case, in my Community Connect, I have the ability to designate somebody as a functional needs person. I can search the system out for anybody who's identified themselves to my system as being a functional needs person. The next required component of our reporting engine are the pre-built reports. These are constantly updated as data is entered within the system and may be used for everyday use within the agency, such as this call percentage report, NFPA 1710 turnout times, or these annual reports used for NFPA reporting, all constantly updated as data is entered into the system. Additionally, we can utilize multiple data sources within a single report, building reports that incorporate them, such as this CAD reconciliation report. It's talking to both the CAD tables and the incident tables as well. Our ad hoc reporting engine needs to allow you to design reports that are based on your individual agency needs, either within one module or sharing data across multiple modules. Here's an example where I'm tying incident data with occupancy, identifying target hazards, and inspection data. I have the ability to apply multiple filters, such as fire zone, which allows you to define unique geospatial areas of your response area. Another example is this report, looking at occupancy, status of OVAP scoring, and target hazard, tied back to those inspection dates to allow prioritization of community risk reduction efforts. Another example, this report looks at apparatus utilization times per call to improve operations on an incident. Now let's sum this to view those reports that you need in your role and create a unique dashboard that incorporates that data, adding the ability to link internally to pages within First Due or external URLs and embedding web pages that you need. Have the information you need on a dashboard immediately at your fingertips. Finally, let's discuss the role of third-party visualization and analytic platforms. Our modern fire RMS system needs to communicate by API, Application Program Interface, which allows software using a defined set of protocols to share data between them. An open database connector, ODBC, that allows applications to access database elements, as well as utilizing pre-built connectors for common third-party platforms. With access to the RMS available with either ODBC or API, as well as pre-built integrations, we vastly expand utilization of our data. Let's have a look at an Esri dashboard, pulling data from an ODBC for response data. On this dashboard, provided thoughtfully to me by Mike, this shows my my accreditation process. It's going to allow me to ensure my accreditation is utilized using data from both within Esri, or in the case of this panel, using my inspection count data per fire zone. Make sure that your modern RMS has the ability to define your service and inspection areas by shapefile to allow geofencing of data and further refine our analysis. And then finally, let's take these Esri dashboards, turn back around, and embed them back in our Fire RMS dashboard system, allowing us to utilize that data in that daily view that I look for every day. And that's concluding our discussion at my end for today. Let's turn back to Mike Cox, as well as Ben and Ryan, to respond to any questions that you might have.
Hey, Mike, this is Ben. We got a question through the Q&A, and I thought it was one that's worth kind of talking about with the larger audience. Someone saw that you mentioned the OVAP scores, and are we automatically assigning those? The answer to that is, yes. That's a new feature that we've, rolled out in the last couple of months here. We've got a pretty robust set of fields where you can document a whole host of data points around the occupancy. And in the release, we've actually started auto-calculating OVAP. Now, with a lot of customers, not every department scores the same way. So we've also incorporated a bit of flexibility so you can kind of get the score based on how you measure things. But yes, it does absolutely automatically calculate. And Mike, I think maybe one of your dashboards, did it have OVAP scores on there, or anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, we do have access, and of course, through First Do they can access as well. But we do have an off-the-shelf solution called Target Hazard Analysis, which basically does an evaluation of every structure and locality based on parcel layer data, and includes criteria like fire flow requirements, life safety hazards. So yeah, an OVAP score is essentially what it is. But yeah, you can have access to that. And again, that's one of our solutions off the shelf that's no charge. So if you have interest in that, let me know.
And Ben, on the First Do side, I've switched back to that pre-plan that we showed at the beginning of our discussion. And as you can see here, I have a tile that indicates there's a risk assessment in place. And I've also included that risk scoring information as part of my occupancy story. So in this case, for a target hazard, it would show that information. For if I have a separate pre-planned story that I've designed for a residence, obviously there's no OVAP score around for that. So we're not going to clutter up the view they're going to see with that information.
No, that's a good point, Mike Gordy. I think I said another good opportunity just to highlight is that there's these alert tiles here are configurable. So they really keep, your focus and attention really laser focused from an operations standpoint on what you want to be flagged for as you're responding to an incident.
Yeah, and I'll highlight on that, Ben, if you have that functional needs individual, or you're using the tiles generated by the compliance engine, you can prioritize where they appear on your dashboard. So if I'm going to a residential structure through Community Connect, that occupancy is indicated they have a bedbound person, I'm going to prioritize that and make that my actual first listing. So as my engine arrives, I know to go into rescue mode rather than just start pulling a hose and getting normal operations. I might have a trapped victim in there.
Yeah. And all of us as presenters here from the industry, I think that's one of my favorite features in First Do is having some of those customized alert tiles. That exact example Mike gave, I think we've all been on 1,000 of those calls where you need 5 or 6 sets of hands to get, work with a patient or access, issues getting into a property. There are some other questions that came up here, and I think this would be a good one to talk about, Mike Gordy, is how responders will see the most up-to-date information. So again, I think the way the question would be worded is, how do we know that it's up to date, and how do we make sure that as a responding engine company, maybe on Tuesday, anything that the engine company on Monday knew is available to them?
So then, because we are in the cloud, and depending what this is a configuration setting as well, Within our platform, we have the option of putting a pre-plan either into directly publish, so it pushes to the cloud and then pushes out to the system in near real time, or you have the option of having a draft mode where you're still going to have access to the previous pre-plan. The new information would have to be approved, and those approving authorities can utilize a report within our dashboard system as they flow in draft mode to say, I need to look at these reports, publish them out to the system. But in the main, because we utilize the cloud, we're going to have that information available in near real time.
Yeah, and I think another point that you mentioned there is these alert tiles are configurable, so you're not kind of limited to the ones that First Do provides. We provide hundreds on day one. You guys actually can load in your own icons, and so I see a lot of departments leverage that opportunity to come in and say, hey, this is contextually really significant for us as a department, and that changes time to time and year over year for departments, right? What they're focused on, what the needs are in that community. So being able to add your own icon and prioritize where that is a really great feature. Some other questions that have come in, and this is probably more Mike Cox, if you want to talk about the Esri fire incident dashboard and kind of like the data flow between the two organizations. And people had some questions about what was the Esri partnership? What does that look like from a product standpoint?
Yeah, so the fire incident dashboard, that's a great performance measure visualization of your RMS data. And that's one that First use embedding or integrating into their application. The way to get data to that, there's a couple ways. You can do it manually, so you can literally drag and drop. It can be that simple, and an output from an RMS for like a CSV file or Excel file type thing. But you can certainly set up a scheduler with our Pro desktop software has a data upload scheduler, or you can write a script of some sort, which is now getting a little bit over my head. I'm a firefighter, not a GIS specialist. I can say big words that mean a lot, rest service and things like that, but I really don't know how to put it together. But it has been done, and it can be done. And that goes with, and we had another question about what other solutions. If you want to view the solutions that are no cost for the fire service specifically, you can go to solutions.arcgis.com and then go to gallery and then look for the fire service under public safety. And any of the solutions on that page that require an RMS type data or pre-planned data or inspection data, that you could seamlessly move that from First Do into your GIS or from Esri into First Do as it's needed. So hopefully that answers the question.
No, I think it does.
Ben, I believe there was a question about ad hoc reporting tools passed on in the chat. And the first item in the question is, can we automate a reporting data file schedule from a natively built report? And the answer is yes. Within the platform for our native reporting app, I'm going to go into the edit mode for this, and we're going to see what I use to configure this. And it'll also apply to my second question, which what type of functionality is available for combining data across multiple modules. First of all, scheduling reports coming out of the system. I can schedule my reports on any frequency to come out. Within our platform, I can send it to an individual user, a team, which is a group of users, or a qualifier or group that flows out of our scheduling solution. So I could hypothetically send a report to my station captains every 3 weeks on a Wednesday. And if I wanted that to expire after a time period or go on indefinitely, I can do that within the system. And I can apply this for each of my reports within the system. In regards to communicating between different modules of the system, that's under data source configuration. This is where I define my data source, and it allows me to create a parent-child relationship within the system. So in this case, I'm looking at pre-plan units. I'm also looking at my occupancy records. When I tie these two tables back together, that's going to bring in a lot of columns that I don't need. So I am going to select those specific columns that I want to apply to my report, either as a report output, in other words, the columns. I can order these in any way I need to. I can also edit the name. So if I don't want occupancy addresses, occupancies, I just wanted to say addresses, I can simply click into the edit mode and say addresses. And that is now, also I need to learn how to spell. That will now become part of the report, and it refers back to that table. I can also use these table elements that I've tied together to sort. In this case, I'm looking at last inspected date. And then I can apply criteria to that. So I'm automatically going to look at things, or I can use filters to filter certain items within the report too. So there's a lot of flexibility as we do this. There was an additional question about the ability to use generate NFPA annual survey data out of the system. And that is native to the system. It's in the pre-built reports. As you can see here, I've categorized those, or rather Ben has categorized those under NFPA annual survey. So I've got part 2, major fires. Part 3, breakdown of my structure fires and other fires and incidents. Breakdown of false alarms, intentionally set fires in structures and vehicles, fire service exposures and injuries. In addition, I have other reports I can utilize. So I can generate a quick turnout time compliance, a call percentage for smaller volunteer agencies that want to ensure their members are responding on time. So I have a lot of capability within these pre-canned reports, as I call them. But as I'll also point out, they're interactive with me for the most part. So if I need to click into my response types and drill down to specific data, I can do that to the incident level and refer back to the actual incident report as well. Once I'm done, I can reset this, and I can even download this graphic to use in any annual reporting I might need to do to my city council or community associations as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. We had another question. It was about kind of some advanced data analytics. I know that there's a lot of broad audiences, and a lot of people maybe space out when it comes to really technical stuff. But what are more flexible solutions beyond just our ad hoc tool? And I think one of the solutions that we like to highlight is our ODBC connection. And where we're a little bit of a market differentiator here is that we actually expose a data warehouse to customers with our ODBC, so that we're hosting the warehouse and then you're running your queries against that warehouse. There's no latency. There's no issues with you having to pay licensing costs to host and then running into licensing compatibility issues with maybe your vendor writing into an environment and you're on different versions. So our ODBC is a really great option when you have a really data heavy department with data analysts or fire analysts to hook up things like Power BI or Tableau, and even connecting that data into Esri directly off of the warehouse are some pretty great options, for the more kind of data-driven teams who have the resources and the technical skills. It's a pretty great option that you don't have to host the data.
Then there was also a question about dashboard functionality. So since we're in here, we can take the time to discuss that a little bit more. The dashboards are going to allow you to embed reports that are native to our system, whether that be a list view. So I can utilize any of my list views, and I've got advanced filtering search capability through those, as well as reordering columns or searching columns. I can also bring in those pre-built reports. So in this case, this is my fire marshal's dashboard. I've got my total number of inspections. Once again, that's interactive with me as the fire marshal, so I can keep up to date on the information. I also have ad hoc reports built for completed inspections, overdue inspections, and I've embedded a list view down below, so I can bring all those capabilities into play. In addition, I've got shortcuts that I can build in the system. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to be able to link to my inspections page, my permits list, so I can see what permits have been applied for. And I can also link to external URLs, so I can access those. And then finally, if I choose to do so, I can embed external websites within. So in this case, as you can see, I brought the weather bug in, and you can see what the radar looks like in a particular region as well. In addition, as I showed you before, I took Mike's Esri dashboard and I turned around and I embedded this as part of my dashboard system, because I'm asking questions regarding that. And if I wanted to add an additional view from my First Due platform, I could do so, whether it be a report and I have a listing of all my reports, or I wanted to add a link to a certain page within my system. I can do all that So I not only have the Esri dashboard sitting here, but any other information that might be pertinent to that. And where I think that would especially come into play is embedding the fire accreditation dashboard. Here I see what I need to do to keep up on my accreditation. So on my inspection count page, I'll also have a report generating out of my First Due platform that shows me that actual inspection count and see who's doing the inspections as well. And I hope that explains the dashboard functionality.
Mike, there was a question, and I think this is it's both Mike Cox and Mike Gordy. Has First Due and Esri, have we worked together on EV and stored energy location data set? I think there's a lot of opportunity, obviously, getting access to that data and quality of it, and how much is globally or generally available. One nice part in the partnership already is that when Mike Gordy showed before that you could put an icon on a map, something like, a warning icon, those, we call them pre-planned units, but those icons and those things that you place on a property, those can all actually be exported out through a REST service, so they can natively be presented in your EOC, in your, even just in, fire headquarters when you're doing tabletop exercises. You're not constrained to only having that data in First Due. Obviously, you're going to want to present it in First Due, and vice versa. Maybe there's a countywide or regional effort to get that in GIS data. It already exists in GIS data, and you're saying, how do I present that inside of First Due? We have the ability to also display GIS layers over your pre-plans. So really, you could go in either direction, right? If you are on the scene and you're doing an inspection, maybe for a new construction for a Tesla charging station, you could document that, put on your pre-planned units like Mike has here with some of these icons, and then display that on through a REST service on Esri dashboards. I really think the use case there, Mike Cox kind of talked about this through some previous hurricane contexts, is having your pre-planned information, everything that you're documenting in the fire department immediately with no effort available to an EOC is invaluable, and really a market differentiator. And then conversely, maybe there are those GIS projects that have already taken place or there's publicly available data. We can display that and overlay it on the maps as well.
And Ben, I'll just point out, as you can see here, when I added this icon and I just grabbed a random icon to add, it has the latitude and longitude. So the Esri system will know where that is at. Additionally, within the First Due platform for those recharging stations, if your jurisdiction is going to have an inspection schedule for those, even if they're not attached to a building, they're in a standalone location, you can create an occupancy around that, as well as having an inspection process, contact information, all associated with that information. So you're going to have one area where your all data is all available for you. And Mike, you're the Esri expert, obviously, in the room. Can you talk about some of the layers that are out there nationally, statewide, even if there's anybody on the line from Canada that you guys use for your disaster responses? Obviously, updated imagery is one of those, but I know you also have wildfire layers and other ones available in ArcGIS Online. You're muted, Mike.
There we go. So yeah, certainly in ArcGIS Online and the Living Atlas, just thousands and thousands of data sets, with many focused on disaster response and public safety in general. But if you go to Living Atlas, you find a lot of things like the FEMA National Risk Index, and then the Fire Fatality Reporter from U.S. Fire Administration. A lot of good data sets that you can pull and drill down to either your locality or your region to start to understand the impacts of those events. And then please go to our disaster response page. If you just search for Esri Disaster Response Program, and at the top you've got a drop down you can pick by disaster. Like you can go to the severe weather and take a look at the tornadoes that were really recently occurred in Tennessee. And what will happen is, as soon as we start getting that data in, we'll post at least the public data, including imagery, those storm tracks, and the severity, and on that disaster response page, where you can have access to it to again bring it into your GIS or into your First Due applications to help you respond to those significant events.
And one thing I would like to highlight as far as the availability of some of these layers is in doing some occupancy pre-plans down, for example, in Pinellas County, Florida. I have the ability from our GIS Online and the Living Atlas or a local GIS on our GIS Online instance, in this case, Pinellas County's, I can go ahead and import flood or hurricane evacuation layers, overlay that on my response map. So not only do I have the information about getting persons out of harm's way, once I get a flooding situation, I know where not to drive. And Danny's asking a question that, is there a tutorial on how to connect First Due data to Esri solutions? Ben, would you like to talk about ODBC a little bit more specifically in a connector to Esri?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few options. And I think, for existing customers, certainly reach out through the support line. We've got some knowledge base articles as well as a lot of skilled folks who can talk about, what's just native, like with no lift, right? Publishing pre-plans to a REST service and then getting that loaded in Esri. All those things exist. There's no project there. Conversely, that other direction, even if you don't, in some smaller municipalities, I know that you don't always have your own dedicated GIS teams. There's still things that are available regionally and statewide that are useful information. Things like where are the train tracks through, my municipality, where do we see those train lines to know how that impacts, if there's a derailment, things like that. So loading in layers is also just a native and easy thing with no lift. And if you have maybe protected data, that's something we also support. So if I know a lot of times maybe the most protected information in all of at least America is definitely hydrant locations, which just really gets me sometimes. If you have protected hydrant data or water source data, we can load that in as a protected layer as well. So those are native in the product. Maybe kind of going a higher level or a broader level about, other options, as Mike Gordy just mentioned, the ODBC. Our ODBC is a data warehouse. You're going to want a technical team, right? I mean, if you don't write SQL queries and you're not familiar with databases, this is probably not the solution you're just going to implement over the weekend, though some power users maybe would. But there's an opportunity there really to get data into the data warehouse. It gives you a lot more extensibility. You're not constrained by any limitations that maybe we put in the reporting tool. Can really get down into niche queries and exports. And from that data, you can turn around and export that and present that in Esri, et cetera. So there's options there for more complex data projects. I think, for most departments, they're going to focus on what's easy and approachable and already ready. But for the real data-driven teams, there's a lot of opportunity there to look at things like, let me correlate inspection data on a map along with, community risk reduction activities we've taken, put that on the map as well, and, do a trend analysis over time and say, hey, like we've put a coordinated and dedicated effort into CRR activities in this region because we saw a really big spike in the last 3 years of fires there. Let's look at this longitudinally over the next year to see how our efforts have really, maybe changed. So there's some opportunities there, especially with some advanced, if you have GIS team available as well, this is well within their normal realm of projects.
And Ben, while you were talking, I brought up from the responder view within our platform, the ability to manage any GIS layers that you bring in. And you simply need a URL. You get to name what you're going to call it. And then depending on the type of resource, if it's a public resource, not password protected, you simply put the URL in. But if it's a protected resource, you simply need a username and password to add that. Once you're done, that becomes part of your view. And you can utilize these layers when you need them. So if I don't need a flood layer in the middle of a dry summer, I can turn that off so it's not going to interfere with my view. And I can bring in those GIS layers that I need for my response at that time.
Yeah, I think there's one question that just came in the Q&A, and I think it's worth addressing. I I need all of my users in the fire department to have individual accounts and subscriptions with Esri? And no, the answer is no, right? We have a partnership with Esri that we, provide access to their product within our product as one of the options. And so, through our partnership with them, we make that available. One thing that's really key, really throughout all of our product, is we want to remove any friction to having this data available in the response process, right? There's no point if you have to go digging through it, right? We should all be past, I know we're not, we should all be past the days of paper response plans and flipping through a manual and a book, right? And so when CAD calls come in from us, we automatically do address matching. And if you've done a pre-plan there, that's all presentable and ready and available. The last thing we want you to do is have to log in, to other services to, have your appropriate, operational readiness and awareness and strategy. So no, through our partnership with Esri, we make ArcGIS available. And then, of course, if you have a subscription and partner, you are a customer of Esri, you have more tools available and really can do some deeper analysis with their tools.
Yeah, and I just noticed there was a question that popped up in the chat about it was for accreditation reporting and having pre-built tools to measure response times compliance. There's a few different ways that we will tackle problems like this. And right now, natively within FirstDue, in our canned reporting tools, we have a incident, under the incident reporting responses, we have response times compliance. So from there, you're able to basically break this down by different date intervals, dispatch status, and then the response time for the department, and then further filter by like incident type, apparatus, by different shifts, things like that. One of the other things that we have right now at FirstDue is a recent rollout of what we're calling FirstDue reports, which you can think of as kind of globally applicable reports that can be used really by any department. It isn't specific to your agency. And these are really geared toward kind of standardized reporting, and response times is something that lends itself really well to that. We're right now in the process of building out some of these for response time specifically. I know a lot of departments have questions about measuring effective response force compliance, measuring response times based on different metrics like 90th percentile, other percentiles, and different ways of looking at incident response. So these are things that we're looking at incorporating in future FirstDue reports, which would be, if you are a user, the day that you sign up, these reports are live in your account, ready to go. And then kind of a last line of defense is anytime there is a report that goes beyond the need of any of the native reporting tools, to be able to develop custom reporting options for your agency specifically on any kind of compliance metric that you need to track or other performance measures that you need to kind of keep an eye on. So all of these are tools in our toolbox and ways that we can be able to meet the need based on the type of accreditation that you need to report on.
And Ben, finally, there's a question, well, not finally, but there's a question about data conversion. It sounds like coming from other systems. I'll just give a high level overview and feel free to supplement, but we have a lot of experience transitioning people from other platforms to ours. We just need a way to tell you to get the data out of your system. Typically, it's exported into a CSV / what you would call a spreadsheet file, and then we will import those into our system as part of that. And if there's a specific product you'd like to talk to us about, please feel free to reach out to some of the contact information that's been provided. We have a question about the EPCR. I can bring that up, but in all reality, that's a better conversation, best shown working on that together. The EPCR has a lot of functionality that you can customize what you need to do. I'll go ahead and just bring up a report that's already in the system. So in this case, I can actually For my vitals, if you're an ALS agency utilizing any of the modern monitors, I can import that record, not just the EKG files and the vitals, but I can actually select those particular EKG images and vital sets that I want to bring in so I don't get bad data coming in as well. That will also populate my vital signs coming in. If I need to add vital signs, I can organize this screen and default those items as I see fit and default answer any other items I need to. So in this case, under heart rhythm, I've changed this order so I can change it and regularly pull up the items I need. Same thing with the listing of heart rate method. I've limited this list to just what I'm using within my system. I'm going to auto calculate my map as well. So there's a lot of customization through what we refer to as workflows. A great example for that is if I happen to add, say, drop intubate somebody, I'm automatically going to turn on a workflow that's going to require me to not only document my intubation, but it's going to require me to have 2 airway confirmations in here as well. So if I go in here and say I've done my tube, I'll just throw a tube size in, fill some of this information in so I can go to the next segment. You'll notice I had these red fields turning on, and that says I now need 2 airway confirmations are required for any advanced airway, as well as an indication for that invasive airway. But Steve, I'd love to connect with you. There's contact information. Feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to go through the whole EPCR solution, show you not only EPCR, but that medications module, which is going to allow you to be DEA compliant for your scheduled substances. And for your regular everyday drugs, you can track those in the system as well. Also tracking your 222 and 41 forms coming from the DEA. Do we have any other questions?
Mike, I see a question that's in the chat. It says, any connections to Slack or NWS platforms?
Yeah, I can I can tackle this one a little bit there. We're currently not integrating with Slack. I think one of the things we're targeting here in Q1 is really a notifications engine, and I think there's a lot of extensibility that's going to come out of that, not just with moving a lot of our notifications inside of the product, so more internal alerting and workflows rather than getting an email to tell you to do something where you just need to turn around and be inside of the product to do the task. But with that, we also, it's going to really open the opportunity to have some workflow engines that maybe are alerting things like Slack or potentially even something like Microsoft Teams, et cetera. To that end, there's 2 other paths I'll mention. We do have some API endpoints in our product now that folks are using to look at things like, pushing apparatus data or even updating things like odometer readings and mileage. We know a lot of you are using fleet management systems that are maybe procured at a county or a larger, large city level, and fleet maintenance is using that to track, mileage and engine health and when is next service due, while our product also supports the ability to document that. And so a lot of folks sometimes come to us and say, hey, we want to actually make these things happen together. So our API endpoints are always expanding, and really a lot of it is driven out of talking to customers and understanding what they're trying to do. So I think that's probably a path there through the work we're doing in notifications and really expanding that. But there may be options, depending on your use case, already available through the API and API endpoints.
And Mike, just one quick round back to GIS layers when we were talking about EV stored energy locations. Do you know if within the Atlas there's any EV stored energy location data sets? I'm kind of putting you on the spot here.
No. So we're trying to address that in a couple of ways. Obviously, some of the lithium ion and EV battery driven fires are pretty catastrophic here in the United States, and they've been addressed through some pretty impressive code enforcement and import requirements internationally, but we have not gotten there yet, right? So how do we track those? Currently, it has to be at a local or at least state level, but primarily local level, and that's engaging and doing the appropriate data collection from the permitting process. Now, if you don't have a permitting process, or maybe as we know, policy sometimes takes time to catch up with technology. There's very little that you can do at a single family dwelling as far as encouraging them to report they have one. I mean, you can ask, obviously. The other thing we can do is, we can do imagery analysis and use machine learning to easily identify all solar panels that might be supporting those kind of systems. So you can quickly filter just single family dwellings and then solar panels or those kind of dead loads on roofs with machine learning model that's already in your GIS. It's already there. So you probably already own it, and we'll be able to do that pretty easily.
And it looks like Chip had a question about chat functionality. Within our mobile responder app, which is available for iOS or Android, there is the ability to set up chat channels that are logged within the system as well. So you can use those for specialty teams, incident response, or any other purposes you need. And Ben, are you seeing any other questions that we need to address, or should we head towards winding it up?
I don't see any more at the moment, so I think we can start to wrap.
Okay. Well, with that, that's the end of the discussion of the 3 steps for effective data strategy for fire and EMS. Any modern fire RMS system needs these components to be able to provide you with the data you need to use strategically. You need to be able to simplify report entry, utilize data that's within the system. In addition, you need to have robust native reporting apps, but also you need to have that ability to use those third-party analytic apps such as Esri, Microsoft BI. But since First Do provides geospatial data, it's a natural feed over to our friends at Esri to allow them to utilize that information. Mike, any closing comments from you?
Once again, thanks for having us, and Esri's certainly glad to support the fire service and International Association of Fire Chiefs through our partnership with First Do. And please reach out if you have any questions or have any needs from us. But thanks again, guys. Great webinar.
Thanks. Over to you, Jeff.
Thanks. Hey, Mike, Ryan, Ben, Mike, great presentation. I can tell by the number of questions we got that a lot of people are really thinking about this strategic vision for the new RMS integration into everything else we do before, during, and after the fire. So thank you very much for a very enlightening webinar presentation. Again, thank you, First Do, for your support of the IESC and all the missions that we carry out day to day. I think last week TSI showed the value of technology across the fire service, and just want to thank all of y'all for being there and participating. Once again, the ISC thanks to participants today as well as the attendees. And again, anytime that there's an opportunity for us to share great knowledge, we want to do that, being the fire and emergency services leaders that we are in the ISC. So thank you very much. Again, keep track of the ISC website for upcoming webinars and new broadcasts that we put on there, and making sure that any questions that you have, you can still follow up with our presenters today. And I encourage you, if you're at a show or a conference and you see that First Do is there, please go up, spend 5 minutes, let you test drive the system, because it is a very great system that I know a lot of folks are using. One of our attendees was just chatting with me on my phone about they had implemented it and they love it. So thank you very much, y'all, for being there and for us, taking care of us and helping us do our jobs to support our communities. With that, we'll end today's webinar and see you on the next one. Take care.
Thanks,
everyone.